All right, so it's a big day in the world. It's actually the US election today. And I'm Canadian, I'm from Canada, and I'm in the mortgage and real estate industry. And, a lot of people have been talking about this day as it'll really affect us in Canada. And it's hard to tell, like, whether it will. It'll be really interesting in the future to see what happens. But I have a feeling that it could really affect us, especially if, for example, let's say Donald Trump wins this election, and he puts on heavy tariffs, let's say on Canada. That could really affect our economy, right? Because we trade so much with the United States. So that could really affect just the whole economy here, right? Not just real estate, but so many other things. So it'll be interesting to see who wins, because there's been so much viral stuff going about this election. It just seems like politics is just more divided than ever, especially in the United States. And it's starting to kind of look that way in Canada too, where people are just becoming a little bit more separated, and their beliefs about things are just more further apart than before. And I do think that in the US, this election is going to be really interesting to watch, because I think it could create more issues or things could get better. Like, it's so hard to tell what's going to happen there. In terms of how it'll affect Canada, it definitely could affect Canada, especially if heavy tariffs are placed on Canada, right? I've talked to some people where they think, let's say if Trump wins, it's going to be really good for Canada. And then you talk to some people that think it's going to be really bad for Canada. And these things are so complicated and deep that it's not a simple answer, right? It's not like you can just, get a quick solution to whatever happens. Like, these things are so deep in terms of how they affect the world. There's so much geopolitical stuff happening around the world too, that we just have to kind of wait and see what happens. But it'll be interesting to see who wins, and then with who wins, what happens in the US, and then how that affects the Canadian economy, and how people feel about let's say the presidential pick. So one thing I was thinking a lot about was, whoever wins this election in the US, I think no matter who wins, there's going to be a lot of anger, because there's a lot of people that don't like Donald Trump, a lot of people that don't like Harris. And let's say whichever one wins, I think the other side is going to be very pissed off and very angry, and that could lead to, part of me feels like it could actually lead to some sort of like civil war in the United States. And I hope I'm wrong about this, but I feel like if the tensions increase so much there, it could just create this brutal like civil war, and that's really scary to think about. Because that could get very ugly and very bad, and just for the globe, that's not okay. Like, if the United States goes into some sort of conflict internally, that's not good for the rest of the world, and that definitely would affect Canadian real estate. And so, for me, I like to go into these deep topics a little bit in my brain, and it's fun to like talk about these things with people. But I think it's kind of like, at the end of the day, if you're talking to someone about how US elections are going to affect Canadian real estate, it's all just speculation. We have no idea what's going to happen. It's fun to talk about it, right? It's fun to discuss these things and make little, ideas, or make little predictions of what could happen. But realistically, all we have to do is just wait and see, right? And I think, it seems like a lot of people are just holding off right now in Canada. I think a lot of people are just waiting and seeing what's going to happen. And again, part of me feels like if the real estate market just takes off, let's say these rates do come down a lot over the next year and a half, and real estate starts moving, then those people that are waiting around are going to get left behind. And unfortunately, like, that's not a good thing. Could we head down further from here? Let's say things get worse, of course, right? And that's the thing, is like, it's so hard to tell what's going to happen with market, especially Canadian real estate. All we can do is just hope for the best, and do the best thing that we can in the moment with the information we have. But in terms of how this election is going to affect Canada, it's so hard to know for sure. There's just so many things to think about, and I think that in Canada, obviously, our election next year is more important than this election because it's our own election. Whether or not we have another liberal victory or conservative victory, I think that election will be really important for us moving forward, and that's something we just have to wait and see for, because and again, I feel like talking about politics and stuff, I don't know if there's a point, right? Because again, at the end of the day, like, people and their mentality and how they think about it are the ones who make decisions that affect the market. Like, I think the psychology of the buyers and sellers is so much more important, and also the economics at play are way more important than just like political stuff happening, or what are these businesses doing, or what's happening in the business world, and how is that going to affect Canadian real estate. Or I think it's more or less like individual psychology of what are buyers and sellers thinking. Are they waiting around? Are they really excited? Are they jumping over each other to buy? Are they going to banks like crazy trying to get pre-qualified? Or are they just waiting around because they just don't feel good and they don't feel like they're in a place where they could buy, right? And so that's kind of like the stage we're at, is that people are still waiting around. They don't feel secure and confident. Maybe they don't have enough income to qualify to buy. And so now they're just in a place where they're waiting and just seeing what's going to happen. And I think with that mentality, like, it's either a great decision because you wait and then prices go down and you get a better opportunity to buy, or you're kind of left behind where the market could just take off, because it can always do that at any point in time, and then you're left behind, and that's a shitty scenario to be in. And so what I would say is, I always tell people, like, if you can buy, it doesn't matter what year it is, what the prices are at, if you can get in the market and buy, you should buy. Buying a house was probably the best thing I ever did, one of the best for sure. And that's why I really got into this business. I got into the business because it helped me so much. I love the process of buying. I love the process of getting my mortgage. It's why I got my licenses. I wanted to help people with that and help people own where they live, right? Because I used to rent, and I was very close to never buying. And my mentality was very different back then, where when I was younger, I was like, no, I never want to buy real estate. I just want to rent where I live. And, I used to be very into the stock market. I used to put all my money into index funds and stuff like that. And then what I ended up doing is using all that money in index funds as my down payment for my home. And that was a great decision because, leverage worked really well for me as soon as I bought. And it's all tax-free as well, right? But again, I think investing in general is always a good thing to do, right? It's just a matter of what to invest in is always a question, right? Like, there's pros and cons to stocks, real estate, so many other things, but I just think, like, real estate is great because you ultimately have to live somewhere, and you get the combination of leverage, right, where you can put down 5 to 20% down and you get access to the full value of that asset, and then you chip away at it over time, pay it down, and then that's yours. Like, you own that completely. And there's something really cool about that, where you could have stocks in a portfolio, but you have no idea what the heck's going on at most of the companies, let's say, that you own, and maybe you don't care to, right? Maybe I think real estate's interesting because I think it's been part of Canadian history now for a while, where it's like everyone wants to buy a place. And I don't think that's going to change relatively soon, even though things are so expensive. I think we're now heading into this renter economy where there's going to be more options to buy real estate. But But I think at the end of the day, if you can get in the market, get in. And yeah, I don't think this U.S. election, I mean, the U.S. election could have huge effects, but it also might not have a lot of effects. We have to wait and see. But I appreciate you guys watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.